The morning sun spilled gold across the marble floors of Oceanfall Resort. Guests laughed, bellboys rushed, the air alive with the hum of another perfect day. And then, through the grand entrance, walked a man no one recognized. A simple cap, a plain jacket, a suitcase trailing behind him. To everyone else, he looked like just another traveler. But this was no ordinary guest. This was John Cena, the man who had built this empire with his own hands. And today he wasn't here as the proud owner. Today, he returned as a stranger to uncover the truth hidden behind his own walls. Everything seemed normal until that night in the lounge. Because when John walked past a quiet booth, he overheard two guests whispering in the dark. Words sharp enough to shatter his world. And one of those voices belonged to Keanu Reeves, face screaming in fear. Stay with us, because what John Cena discovers in his own resort will shake every belief you've ever had about loyalty, betrayal, and the price of silence. Before we begin the story, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Globe showing Europe Africa backhand index pointing down. We love seeing how far our family reaches. And if you want powerful stories like this every single day, hit like, thumbs up, share counterclockwise arrows button with your friends, and subscribe bell now to be part of the journey. Oceanfall Resort, the place once born from dreams. The morning sun spilled golden light across its marble floors. Children laughed, guests chatted, and bellboys hurried with luggage. Everything looked like a normal day. Yet this day was anything but ordinary. A man walked slowly through the grand entrance. A medium-sized suitcase rolled behind him, a simple jacket on his shoulders, a plain cap hiding most of his face. To anyone watching, he was just another traveler. But behind those eyes was a story no one could see. That man was John Cena, the same man who had built this resort with vision and sweat. But today he wasn't here as the celebrated owner. Today, he had returned as a stranger to see what had become of his empire when he wasn't watching. At the reception, a young woman greeted him with a bright smile. "Good morning, sir. Do you have a reservation?" John lowered his voice just enough to disguise it. "Yes. Alan Hayes. 1 week." Her fingers tapped the keyboard, and moments later she handed him a keycard. "Suite 1503, Oceanfront. Welcome to Oceanfall, Mr. Hayes. I hope you enjoy your stay." John nodded politely. But inside, a quiet thought struck him. I once knew every employee's name, every corner of this building, every detail down to the paint on the walls. Now I'm forced to hide who I am in the very place I created. A cheerful young bellhop took his bag and led him down the hall. As John walked, his sharp eyes caught every flaw. Paint peeling near the spa entrance. Stains on the once pristine carpets. A staff whispering irritably at the counter. And smiles that looked polite, but hollow. These weren't numbers on a report. These were cracks in the soul of the place he built. When he entered his suite, he slid open the balcony door. The ocean stretched endlessly before him, blue and breathtaking. It should have brought him peace. Instead, a heavy weight pressed down on his chest. This used to be my dream. Now it feels lost. His phone buzzed. A notification flashed. Executive board meeting next Thursday. John instantly silenced it. Alan Hayes didn't attend board meetings. That night, he drifted into the lounge. Soft jazz played in the corner. The air smelled faintly of whiskey and polished wood. Guests chatted, laughed, and clinked their glasses. Everything seemed ordinary, too ordinary. But John Cena had no idea. In just a few minutes, he was about to overhear something. Two men whispering in a booth behind him. Words that would freeze his heart. Words that would drag him into the fight of his life. He's never around. He won't see it coming. By next week, it'll all be over. John's eyes narrowed. Then he heard a second voice, calm, Familiar, unmistakable. It was the voice of Keanu Reeves. John Cena froze, his glass of whiskey halfway to his lips. The voices behind him weren't just idle gossip. They were plotting. "He's never around," one of the men repeated, his tone sharp. "Next week's board vote seals it. Once the papers are signed, the resort isn't his anymore. It belongs to us." John shifted slightly in his seat, angling the mirror behind the bar just enough to catch a reflection. Two men sat in the booth. One was a heavy-set figure in a tailored suit, his face half hidden in shadow. The other leaned forward, his voice lower, confident, calculated. And then John heard it again, clear, undeniable. The second voice was Keanu Reeves. A chill ran down his spine. Keanu, once an ally, once a friend. What was he doing here? Why was he sitting with them? John clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. Bursting in now would ruin everything. He needed to listen, to gather every word. "The valuation is complete," Keanu murmured. "Celestial Holdings has everything lined up. After restructuring, profits triple in 2 years. The board will cave once they see the numbers. Cena won't even know what hit him." The other man chuckled darkly. "He gave this place up the moment he stepped back. He left it to the sharks. Now it's ours." John's grip on his glass tightened until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to storm over, to demand answers. But he forced himself to breathe. Alan Hayes, his cover identity, wouldn't blow his disguise. Not yet. Instead, he stood slowly, paid for his drink, and walked out as if nothing was wrong. But inside, his world was cracking apart. Keanu Reeves working with Celestial Holdings? Planning a hostile takeover? As John made his way back to his suite, every step grew heavier. He could still hear Keanu's voice in his head, betrayal hidden behind smooth, corporate promises. That night, sleep refused to come. John stood on the balcony, staring out at the waves crashing below. The place he had built with sweat and pride was slipping away, piece by piece. And now, even Keanu was part of the storm. "Fire," he whispered to himself, voice low but steady. "If they think I won't fight for this, they don't know me at all." The stage was set. The board vote was days away. Celestial Holdings had the money, the leverage, and now even Keanu Reeves on their side. But John Cena wasn't about to go quietly. The next morning, John Cena moved through the resort like a shadow. No one recognized him. To the staff, he was just another guest in a plain polo and cap. But his eyes saw everything. At the spa, the once glittering tiles were chipped, the steam room taking forever to heat. A bellhop muttered under his breath about broken elevators. Near the loading dock, a driver complained about late payments. And in the cafe, a barista whispered to a server that the staff no longer received evening meals. These weren't minor issues. They were signs of rot, problems buried beneath glossy reports and corporate smiles. By noon, John sat at the juice bar, deliberately close to a group of men in sharp suits. Among them was Gerald Harrow, a longtime board member. Harrow's laugh was loud, but his words were cold. "Celestial Holdings is ready," Harrow said, tapping on a tablet. "With the new loans, we'll triple the return inside 2 years. Cena's out. He won't even see it coming." Beside him, another man smirked. "Miles says he hasn't lifted a finger in months. Hands off. Distracted. He doesn't deserve it anymore." John's chest tightened at that name. Miles Harrington. His CFO. His friend of 20 years. The man who once helped refinance the resort when they were drowning in debt. Miles? Part of this? John gripped his glass so hard it nearly cracked. The betrayal cut deeper than he imagined. As he left the bar, his phone buzzed. A message from Andrea, his longtime executive assistant. "Urgent board meeting scheduled next Thursday. Full financial review requested by Miles Harrington. John stopped in his tracks. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't speculation. This was real. The takeover was already in motion. That night, pacing his suite, John pulled out his personal laptop. He logged into the resort's secure financials and began digging line by line. What he saw made his blood run cold. Profits shrinking. Their operating costs ballooning. 3 new loans under the resort's name, none authorized by him. A 1 renovation bill nearly triple its original estimate. And then one name stood out, Aura Building Solutions. A shell company. A fake contractor. And when he dug deeper, he found the truth. Aura was owned by Celestial Holdings. It wasn't just a takeover. It was a hostile erasure of everything he built. John leaned back, fists clenched. The storm was bigger than he imagined. Celestial had money. The board. His own CFO. And Keanu Reeves. But they didn't have him yet. The rooftop restaurant spun slowly above the coastline, glass windows opening to a breathtaking 360 degrees view of the ocean. Once, John Cena had designed this place for proposals, anniversaries, and timeless celebrations. Tonight, it felt like the stage for betrayal. Miles Harrington was already seated in the far corner, his once perfect suit showing faint creases, silver streaks creeping into his hair. When John approached under the name Alan Hayes, Miles stood with forced politeness. "Mr. Hayes. Thank you for making time." John sat across from him, calm but coiled like a spring. "Happy to be here," he replied, his voice steady. The waiter delivered menus and water, then vanished. Miles launched into a rehearsed pitch. Corporate event packages, loyalty programs, expansions. His hands shook slightly as he flipped the glossy pages. His eyes kept drifting to the exit. Finally, John leaned forward. His voice was low but sharp as steel. "Let's talk about Celestial Holdings instead." Miles froze. The brochure slipped from his hands, water spilling over the rim of his glass. For a long beat, neither man spoke. John removed his cap and glasses. His true face caught the glow of the setting sun. "It's me, Miles. You don't have to pretend." Miles' color drained. "How long have you?" "Long enough," John interrupted. "To know my best friend is either betraying me or trying to save something behind my back." Miles looked around nervously, then leaned in, his voice trembling. "Not here. Please. Meet me in the maintenance shed in 1 hour. I'll explain everything. But not here." John studied him for a long moment, his eyes searching for truth. Then he gave a single, sharp nod. No more words were exchanged. The maintenance shed sat at the far edge of the resort, long forgotten by most guests. Once, it had been nothing more than a rusty shack stacked with broken furniture. Years ago, John Cena and Miles Harrington had renovated it together, turning it into a tidy hub for tools, storage, and dreams of what Oceanfall could become. Now, under the dim light of a flickering bulb, the shed felt like a confessional. Miles was already there, pacing, his tie loosened, his face drawn with exhaustion. When John stepped inside, Miles spun around, guilt written across every line of his face. "They have everything, John," Miles blurted before Cena could speak. His voice cracked with panic. "Every shortcut we ever took to get this place off the ground. Every permit we rushed. Every under-the-table deal. They dug it all up. And if I didn't cooperate," he swallowed hard, "they threatened to leak it. To regulators. To the press. To everyone." John's jaw clenched. "So you gave them our numbers. Let them plant their people in the boardroom. Let them buy my resort out from under me." Miles ran a trembling hand through his graying hair. "I thought I could control it. Buy time. Shape the deal so at least you walked away clean. A payout, no headlines, no prison. I was trying to protect you. John stepped closer, his eyes burning. Protect me? By betraying me? He gestured around the dusty shed, to the blueprints still rolled up in the corner. What happened to us, Miles? We built this place with our own hands. We fought for every brick. And now you're handing it over to them. Miles' voice dropped to a whisper. You left, John. You went after new ventures. And I was still here, holding it together, until I couldn't anymore. The words hit like a punch. Silence filled the shed, broken only by the ocean wind rattling the old tin roof. Finally, John exhaled sharply. Thursday is the board vote. You said they have the numbers. Unless something big happens to change their minds, Miles admitted. John's eyes narrowed. How much is left in the Anderson account? Miles hesitated. Roughly 2 million. John nodded slowly. A dangerous plan began to take shape. Then we're not done yet. We're going to expose them. Not just to the board, but to the staff, the guests, the press if we have to. We fight back. Not from the boardroom, but from the lobby. Miles stared at him, stunned. John, that could destroy everything. John stepped closer, his voice hard as iron. No, Miles. It's the only way to save it. Two old friends stood in the shadows of the shed, once partners, now broken, but united by one final shot at redemption. In 6 days they would either save Oceanfall, or lose it all. The rooftop restaurant continued to rotate slowly as if mocking them both. Miles Harrington had just opened the door to a darker secret, one that could either explain everything or prove his ultimate betrayal. At dawn, John Cena stood on his balcony, staring at the waves rolling beneath a blood-red sunrise. The decision was made. He wouldn't just fight in the shadows, he would drag the truth into the light. First stop, security. Frank Martinez, the resort's head of security for 15 years, nearly fell out of his chair when John walked into his office. Mr. Cena, sir, I thought you were in Europe or... Frank, John cut him off firmly. No titles. No announcements. What I'm about to ask stays between us. Within minutes, Frank had pulled up 6 months of camera feeds. Grainy footage flickered across the monitors, late-night deliveries, hushed meetings in the parking garage, handshakes in shadowed corners. John pointed. That one. Zoom in. The screen sharpened to reveal Gerald Harrow, one of the board's oldest members, slipping an envelope to a man in a gray blazer. John recognized him instantly, an official from the State Gaming Commission. Download everything, John ordered. Parking garage, spa renovations, backroom meetings. All of it. His phone buzzed again. The text from Miles. They're here. Meeting moved up to the boardroom. Feels rushed. Something's off. John's jaw tightened. They were accelerating. Maybe they were nervous. Maybe they suspected him. Either way, time was running out. He turned back to Frank. Patch me into the resort-wide PA system. The one reserved for emergencies. Frank blinked. Sir, that's never been used except for fires. This is a fire, John said grimly. Minutes later, the speakers crackled to life across every hallway, every pool deck, every dining room. Guests froze mid-conversation. Staff stopped in their tracks. And then, John Cena's voice thundered across Oceanfall. Good morning, guests and staff. My name is John Cena. I am the owner of Oceanfall Resort. For the past week, I've been here undercover, staying as one of you. I've seen things I needed to see. I've heard things I was never meant to hear. And in 5 minutes, I will be making an announcement in the main lobby, one that will affect every single person in this building. I encourage you, all of you, to be there. Whispers erupted like wildfire. In the boardroom, Celestial's executives went pale. Harrow slammed a fist on the table. What the hell is going on? That voice, another muttered. That was Cena. He's here. They scrambled for their phones. Lawyers. Crisis teams. But it was too late. Downstairs, the lobby was already filling. Guests shoulder to shoulder with staff, housekeepers beside business executives, bellboys beside bartenders. And at the top of the grand staircase, John Cena appeared, no longer hidden, no longer Alan Hayes. He was the owner. And he was ready to fight. The room fell silent as John gripped the railing, whiteboard in hand. He was about to expose everything, before the entire resort. The lobby of Oceanfall Resort had never been this full. Guests pressed in from the mezzanine, staff gathered shoulder to shoulder, even the jazz trio from the lounge peeked nervously from the corner. Phones were raised, recording every second. And there, on the grand staircase, stood John Cena. One hand gripping the railing, the other holding a whiteboard, scrawled with names, Harrow, Celestial, Burke. His voice cut through the hush like a blade. I built this place from nothing. Brick by brick. Handshake by handshake. I knew every employee by name. But somewhere along the way, I stepped back. I trusted others to protect it. And in that silence, certain people thought they could take it all away. Not just from me, but from all of you. A murmur swept the crowd. Celestial Holdings, Cena continued, his tone steady but fiery, planned to strip Oceanfall of its soul. They bribed regulators, laundered money through fake renovations, blackmailed my closest friend, and they thought they could bury it in board meetings and fine print. From the crowd, Gerald Harrow pushed forward, red-faced and seething. Flanked by celestial executives, he barked. These are outrageous claims, Cena. You have no evidence. John's eyes flicked toward the security booth. Actually, he said calmly, we do. Frank Martinez stepped out, carrying a tablet. One by one, board members were handed footage, grainy but damning. Envelopes exchanging hands in dark garages. Unauthorized contracts signed by shell companies. Audio recordings of meetings, Miles' secret insurance policy. The crowd gasped. Staff whispered, eyes widening. Guests angled their phones to catch the screens. You think this will hold up in court? Harrow sneered. We have lawyers. Connections. John stepped forward, his presence towering. And you also have footage of yourself paying off a state official. I wonder how well that will play on the evening news. A ripple of shock spread through the lobby. And then from the back, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Enough. All eyes turned. Keanu Reeves stepped forward from the crowd, calm, collected, his expression unreadable. Whispers erupted instantly. Guests gasped. Staff stiffened. Phones zoomed in. John locked eyes with him. So it's true. You're standing with them. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his voice low but audible. I'm standing where the future is, John. You built this place. But you lost it. And sometimes, even dreams need new owners. The words landed like a hammer. The betrayal was now undeniable. The lobby trembled with tension. John Cena and Keanu Reeves, once allies, now stood on opposite sides of a war for Oceanfall. And the final strike was moments away. The lobby was silent, every heartbeat echoing like thunder. On the staircase, John Cena stood firm, while across the floor, Keanu Reeves and the celestial executives bristled with defiance. You've already lost, John, Harrow spat, waving his lawyers forward. This takeover is signed, sealed. And corrupted, John interrupted, his voice booming. He motioned to Frank. The giant screens flickered again. More evidence poured out, documents of fraudulent loans, bribe transfers, and boardroom recordings. Miles Harrington stepped into the light, his voice trembling but resolute. Every conversation, every threat, I recorded it all. To protect this place. To protect him. He gestured toward John. Keanu's jaw tightened, his calm facade cracking. You think this saves you? You think a few files change what's coming? John stepped down the staircase, each stride echoing in the hush. What's coming is the truth. And the truth is stronger than your takeover. The crowd erupted, staff cheering, guests chanting, phones capturing the moment live. Celestial's lawyers paled, whispering frantic damage control. Harrow's face drained of color. John turned to the staff, his voice softer now but filled with conviction. This resort is not just glass and stone. It's you, the people who work here, the families you support, the guests who return year after year. That's what Celestial tried to erase. And that's what I'll never let go. The applause thundered, shaking the walls. Guests clapped, staff cried. The very soul of Oceanfall roared back to life. Cornered, Celestial Holdings had no choice. By sunset, their bid was withdrawn. Harrow resigned. 2 board members followed. Keanu slipped quietly into the crowd, his expression unreadable, whether in defeat or plotting his next move, no one could tell. That night, John returned to the lounge. The jazz trio played softly, the staff gathered in celebration. Miles sat at the bar, weary but hopeful. You still do that thing with your watch when you're nervous? Miles said with a faint smile. John chuckled under his breath. And you still drink without drinking. For the first time in weeks, they both laughed. John raised his glass. To Oceanfall. To family. The crowd echoed it, voices rising in unison. To family. Sometimes we forget what truly matters. Not the numbers. Not the titles. But the people. Betrayal may cut deep, but loyalty, courage, and truth will always rise stronger. Oceanfall was never just a resort. It was a reminder that dreams, no matter how fragile, are worth fighting for.